Hello class. It's the evening and I was so inspired by our time together that I thought I would just go ahead and do this glazing video now for your homework for the spheres. Yeah. So I'm going to use this beautiful quinacridone lilac color that my friend Mason Gummer told me about, because it makes the most beautiful purples. And it looks different than it looks there. So I'm going to need a lot of this paint. So I'm really digging away at it because I'm going to make a bunch of circles. Of course, I can make more, but the reason we don't like to make more is because our paint starts to dry. So this is why I like puddles, and the rule of thumb is mix more paint than you think you need, because if you mix it if you need more while you're painting, your paint starts to dry and then you start getting streaks and stuff. So to have the freshest application, you want a lot at hand. And I have some in here too, which is kind of working for me. So I think that'll do it. Okay, now I'll get one of my home brushes. I like this one. I got this in Paris. Actually, I think I'll use the bigger one. These are quill brushes. You can tell they're quill. They call them mops too, but they have these ties on them. But generally they hold a pretty good amount of water, and the ones I've tried come to a nice point. So I don't know why they're different than round brushes that way, coming to a nicer point. Okay, so I'm going to do some circles here, and I'm going to think about my light coming, well actually it's coming from that way, so maybe I'll just think about it coming from where it's actually coming from. And so I'm going to start with a wet and wet. And what that is I'm putting water on the paper, so the paper is wet, and then I'm using wet paint to dip on the paper or into the water. So I'm going wet paint into wet paper. And actually I'm kind of liking how that's looking. So I'm not going to do too much more with that. Maybe I'll make my sphere a little better, kind of keep drawing with my paintbrush. I apologize if I put my head in front of the screen. Okay, so that's how I'm going to do that sphere, and we'll just leave it. How should we do the next sphere? The next sphere, I will do wet and dry. I have wet paint. Actually, you know what? I think I want to use different colors. Okay, so I'm going to put this one over here. I'm going to do wet and dry and do a smaller sphere. And you are absolutely welcome to draw the spheres before you paint them if you must. But I wonder if you must. Okay, there's another sphere. And now let's do one more this color. Let's put it over here. And I will do this one also wet and dry. And see how I'm pushing down on my brush? I'm getting more paint, dropping that in, trying to get the most efficiency out of my brush that I can. But check out what I'm going to do with this one. I don't really like that. Well, I guess the highlight is fine. But since it's a sphere, let's make it softer. So I've wetted my brush, tapped the water off. Here, let me do this here. Wetted the brush, kind of like tapped the water off. And then I'm going to soften the edges here by pulling it down. Now I'm getting a lot of water, so I should probably get rid of some of it so that I can come and kind of do the same thing up here. And so what I'm doing is I'm showing that this is a sphere because we have a soft highlight as opposed to a hard highlight. All right. And then, oh, these are too symmetrical that way. I'm going to come down here and get some indigo. And let's do another sphere. With the highlight. And this one I'll just cover completely. Oops. I need to make this a little more spherical. And then I'm going to rinse out my brush. But this time, I'm going to actually take a paper towel and kind of soak up the water. And the reason is because I want a thirsty brush, a brush that was wet but is now wrung out of water. And then I can do a nice highlight that way. So you see, I'm not getting back to white, but it's definitely a highlight. It's fine. So now I'm getting more water, clean water, and dropping clean water in, wringing it out, and then I can lift it that way. And then I got a little better. So it's almost, not back to white, but that's pretty good. Okay, let's do one more sphere. And how should I do it? Let's do the wet and wet. Let's do it all, a whole circle wet. And when we say wet and wet, we want to see the tooth of the paper. We don't want this. That's too much. So let me go ahead and sponge out and lift that up. This is why I like sable brushes. They were the first ones that I used, and I got used to using them as sponges. And so that's why I like them. So now I have this wet circle, but you can still see the tooth of the paper. Oh, there. See, and this is the thing about water. It keeps moving. So now I'm getting a bead there again, which I'm going to go ahead and pull up. Okay. So now let's go ahead and get some more indigo. Actually, what I'm doing, I'm mix it with a little phthalo blue. These need more water. They're getting dry again. Okay, and now check this out. Oh, look at that. Now this is pretty dark. I might have a hard time making this darker. Nah, that's not true. Watercolor dries a little lighter than when it's wet, like seashells. And actually I kind of like that highlight, so I'm just going to leave it. Okay, that's the first layer of my sphere. Now I'm getting, from this wet and wet, I'm getting a lot of stuff there, but I'm just going to leave that because I'll show you when it dries how it does a back run, which some artists like, some artists don't like. I find there's definitely a place for them, and artists who know how to use them skillfully, it's brilliant. But this is all I'm going to do for now because now they need to dry so that I can do the next layer of the sphere. All right, thanks for your attention. Bye-bye.